Good afternoon, AUSA. Our next panel will begin in just over 1 minute. Please find your way to any available seats, silence your cell phones, and please, as a courtesy, keep all sidebar conversations at the perimeter to a minimum. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to our next panel, Integrating All-Source Fused AI.
Good afternoon, everyone. How are we doing? Thank you for the opportunity to speak this afternoon. I'm Tony Hale, the 48th G2 of the Army. It is great to see such a standing room only crowd here for the second to the last Warrior Corner of AUSA 2024. So really thank you for coming out. And we've got a great panel for you this afternoon. As you may see, most of the panel is an Army panel. And I know this is the Army annual conference, but we are going to fight in a joint world. And so I'm proud to have my good friend, the Space Force S2, here with us this afternoon, and we'll get to that in just a minute. My purpose this afternoon is really to set the stage for this Warrior's Corner on leveraging artificial intelligence to enable all-source fused intelligence by providing context on the current global environment. Next slide. So we live in a VUCA world. Slide. We live in a VUCA world. VUCA was developed in 1989 at the Army War College after the fall of the Soviet Union. You know, it stands for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. The geopolitical environment today exists all of these characteristics, and some people would say we're in a time that resembles somewhere between 1937 and 1939. The image over here to my right helps us illustrate the fraction of global challenge. It's version 12. I developed this at the end of January. Everything on the slide's unclassified. But we could be in a fight tonight in 3 of our 6 combatant commands: INDOPACOM, CENTCOM, and EUCOM. This is the driving pace for transformation in our Army. And it's the urgency that you hear the Chief of Staff of the Army talk about every day as we look at his 4 focus areas: warfighting, delivering combat-ready forces, continuous transformation, and strengthening our profession. With this growing complexity, we also see an increase in available data. Actually, we are drowning in data. I see data as both a challenge, but also an opportunity. That's essentially what AI is for our Army. It's an opportunity. AI presents opportunities for progress more than any other technology we have seen in the last few decades. It's going to help maximize our most precious resource for the Army, and that's our people. We must learn to leverage AI to organize the world's information, reduce manpower requirements, make it useful, and position our people for speed and accuracy in delivering information to the commander for decision dominance. We must take the analytical high ground. Information advantage over the adversary is foundational to battlefield success. The VUCA environment is ripe for exploitation, and AI is in a position to help our Army to succeed on both the battlefield and to ensure the warfighter has more information to defeat the enemy. Look at Israel's shocking speed and effectiveness in targeting Hezbollah and Hamas. It demonstrates and maintains information advantage. for decision dominance over those two adversaries. It's clear, but that wasn't built overnight. It takes an effort. The question is, how does the United States Army ensure that we have the right information advantage over our adversaries? That's where everyone here and our industry partners can help us. We need your help to our industry partners. When it comes to data, when it comes to artificial intelligence and machine learning, when it comes to innovation and transformation, that's where we need your help. When we think about all those things, we need to bring commercial-grade data analytics, security, Gen AI, and large language models to assist in all these efforts. And we must also execute these efforts responsibly. Like Secretary Austin says, responsible AI is the place where cutting-edge technology meets our timeless values. CENTCOM is just one example. We can see it in the Russia-Ukraine fight. We can see it in what's going on in the Indo-PACOM AOR with the PLA, the Philippines, and Taiwan. Our Army leaders recognize the VUCA environment we live in, and our force must recognize and be ready to fight tonight in any scenario. With industry collaboration, we can implement technological solutions into our processing, exploitation, and dissemination architecture that will increase the tempo of decision-making, combat lethality, and really give us decision dominance over the enemy. This partnership ensures for everyone in the business of defending the United States that we will be ready to fight and win, and this will defend. With that, I'd like to turn the mic over to our great panel. Our panel members, Major General Greg Gagnon, United States Space Force Chief of Intelligence, Brigadier General Rory Crooks, the Director of the Long Range Precision Fires, CFT, Colonel Brandon Van Orton, my Chief of Intelligence for Operations in the G2, Mr. Mike Monteleone, All Domain Sensing CFT Director, and my battle buddy, Mr. Brigadier General Ed Barker, the Program Executive Officer for Intelligence, Electronic Warfare, and Systems. So with that, Greg, I'll pass another mic. Are you guys good?
We're good on this mic. You good on the mic? There you go. Trade that. How's this? Hey, I'm looking for a little bit of participation here because I think I'm at the AUSA conference. So don't you guys say hooah or something like that all the time? How's that go? 1, 2, 3. All right, thanks. We're still picking one because we're new, okay? What I'd like to do today is kind of build on General Hale's points about complexity and uncertainty. And it's important we set that in the context of maybe 30, 40 years of investment. If you were in the Army when Lieutenant General Hale was commissioned as Lieutenant Hale, so 1988? 1990. Raise your hand. Raise your hand up high. I just want to see how many folks we have. All right, so this comes with a question, sir. How many folks were on active duty in the United States Army in 1990? Yeah, he's saying double. I will tell you the number is 732,000 soldiers on active duty. Today on active duty, you have, my number says 445,000, okay? Now, if I was to tell you in the same time horizons, your United States Air Force had 10,000 aircraft, but today has just over 5,000 aircraft, and I was to tell you that your United States Navy had about 600 ships, and today they have 294. You would see that the joint force, whether it's on the ground, on the sea, or in the air, had generally shrunk by about 40% in manpower and kit. And you would say, how could we be successful in an uncertain environment that's incredibly complex? And I would tell you that we had been successful in a number of national security objectives because we had learned how to exploit the advantages from space. We were able to see further when our adversaries could not. We were able to track mobile targets when our adversaries could not. We were able to put those grids together to create weapons engagement zones at exceedingly long sensor and weapons ranges when our adversary could not. Okay? We had space superiority, not because we earned it through a fight, but because we were the first to put it all together. Army success, America's success, depends on space superiority. If we don't have it, is this Army big enough? Is this Navy big enough? Is this Air Force got enough shooters and aircraft? That's a question I'd like you to think about as you leave this conference. Now, I'll give you something else that should give you some concern. 2012, Lieutenant Colonel Gagnon and Lieutenant Colonel Barker are leaving Kandahar. If you look up in outer space, the PRC has 75 satellites. Last month, they went over 1,000 satellites. Those satellites are meant to sense, decide, and track this force. And with extensively long shot ranges, they have created a formidable weapons engagement zone in the Pacific. It's important that the Army recognizes this, and they do. And you see it from the language from Army Space about concealment and not taking concealment as an assumption, but knowing that you have to earn it. Your partner in ordering, in gaining concealment, gaining survivability, and engaging in long-range fires is your United States Space Force. We will deliver space superiority for the joint force. We will integrate with your teammates inside your formations to make sure we remain successful. I'm looking forward to the questions.
All right, thanks, sir. So you've heard the decision dominance that General Hale laid out. I'm going to frame this a little bit different, and I'm going to take it from things that are near and dear to Intel folks' hearts, which is processing, exploitation, and dissemination, PED. As you look at fires, and you look at joint fires specifically, now and into the future, potentially, we see PED as a LIMFAC to closing joint kill webs at speeds and scale necessary for LISCO. And so to unpack that a little bit, I do want to take the opportunity to just take the word targeting, demystify it a little bit, and put it in context. My definition, not in doctrine, targeting is nothing more than prioritizing resources, constrained resources, in space and time, and coordinating for them in space and time to achieve a commander's outcome. And if that's what targeting really is, prioritizing resources, then the target itself, that crosshair on a map, that is a placeholder for your resources. And around that, you coordinate to make sure that you have everything when and where it needs to be to execute that mission. So with targeting and being what we use to prioritize our constrained resources, PED is a finite resource, right? Especially the way we look at it today with our 35 Foxtrot analysts in an ACE, right? Whether you subscribe to F2 T2 EAD, which I won't explain or won't spell out for you, or you use D3A. The A in both of them is assess, so you need PED on the back end of target engagement to assess, as well as to find or to detect your target. With humans as the LIMFAC, again, we have challenges in trying to scale this up. So what do we do with this finite resource? We have an opportunity that the folks in the panel after me are going to talk about to expand this finite resource and to use things like artificial intelligence, machine learning to expand that. But as we take the opportunity to expand that resource, we have to make sure that we play to the intrinsic strengths of each. So when you look at AI, its intrinsic strength is its ability to recognize patterns and the ability to take in masses of data to recognize patterns in ways that really aren't encumbered by human evolution biases that come with human evolution. So if pattern recognition is AI's strength, then the human strength is the ability to put it in context. So to contextualize all those patterns, all those things that AI will offer up as potential targets, the humans will be able to contextualize that and apply intuition, apply empathy, if it is to understand and decipher human-driven behaviors. And those two together will allow us to expand PED as a limited resource, both on the front end of our target engagement and on the back end of it. Once we master this, then I think we can start to scale up to what's necessary for large-scale combat operations to close our joint kill webs. And with that, I'll be followed by Brandon.
So good afternoon. My name is Brandon Van Orden. I'm the Chief of Intel Ops, like General Hale mentioned. I've been asked to talk about just a couple of things that we're doing with AI and ML-enabled technology that has practical applications in the near future. And I'll pull the string on two items that General Crooks just highlighted. So reimagining the concept of PED to close some of the limitation gaps that General Crooks described, and then getting to a point where we can have a conversation with our data as opposed to a transactional relationship with our data. So from a PED standpoint, and this isn't just to change the term so we can get away from the limited finite resource, but as we talk about PED, and for those of you who have been around a while, it's 3 verbs we made a noun. It's focused against a platform. It's largely single-sourced and was a coin-era artifact. And so as we look towards new concepts, we lean into the idea of multi-int data fusion and analysis. So any of you have a great acronym or title for that, short title for that, I'm looking for nominations. So when we talk about multi-int data fusion and analysis, we talk about how do we apply realistic AI-enabled technologies or machine learning models against real operational requirements today. And I've seen a bunch of great things here in the last few days that has been a great education for me, and things that we can apply, I think, in the relatively near future. So we need help from this group to do things like vertically layer those ML models, and then horizontally integrate them across platforms and programs to apply, again, against real finite resources and prioritized operation requirements in our assigned theaters. And that helps us transition to my point number 2, getting to a point where we can have a conversation with data instead of a transactional relationship. This is not science fiction. It is science fact, and we need help from this group to make it science reality. So when I say things like have a conversation with data, I picture an analyst sitting behind a computer with a microphone or a headset in the back of a ground combat vehicle or at a drop zone or marshalling area that asks questions like, where is the 30th Armored Recon Brigade? What is it doing, and what do you think it's going to do next? And then based on my friendly force disposition, those capability that I have arrayed against that 30th Recon Brigade in this example, the terrain and the roads, our AI ML enabled technology should be able to recommend to me the most likely things it thinks it's going to do, and then I will add context to it, like General Crooks just mentioned. And then I want to go further and ask it, okay, what happens if it rains? What happens if the hardball is washed out? What happens if I put this piece of U.S. capability into the mix? How does that change the probability of what that 30th Armored Recon Brigade will do? And I'm very excited to field some questions, so I'll hand it over to Mr. Monteleone.
Hey, thanks, Brandon. Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to see all of you. Mike Monteleone, I'm incredibly honored to be the director of the new all-domain sensing cross-functional team in Army Futures Command, and it's great to be here with some great colleagues and friends. So we talked about a lot of key operational context here. I want to talk about a little bit of what the new CFT is going after, and really the key role I play in Army Futures Command. So the new cross-functional team is focused on taking advantage of that sensing environment. Some of that is coming from existing systems, and we probably are not taking full advantage of what's already in the inventory. It's a data environment. Are we taking full advantage of the data? I would argue the answer is no, and that's a challenge that I've talked to many of you as we walked around here over the last few days in great conversation. Next piece is getting after that architecture. We talked about how to move data around, but it's not just about moving the data. It's what I'm doing with the data all the way from the sensor, and it could be on the platform, it could be regionally, locally, or even globally, to be able to take full advantage and use that data dominance or turn it into decision dominance. That's a really key factor, as well as supporting that global pet environment as we continue to evolve. So those are the three key areas tied in with electronic warfare, as well as the P&T role that we played before, all taking full advantage of the electromagnetic spectrum. Now, cross-functional teams as a part of Futures Command, right? We have that superpower and its requirements. That's our job, is to produce requirements. Otherwise, great partners like General Barker here can't do his job. We can't align resources against that. So we have to make sure that we have the right requirements. And how do we get after that? That's through reps and sets. That is through experimentation. That's with soldiers, hands on the kit, telling us what works, telling us what doesn't work, pushing that future button and that I believe button every once in a while, and continuing to iterate. The other thing is pushing on the requirement system a little bit. Some way we do requirements is kind of old-fashioned and slow. We're talking software. We're talking about algorithms. We're talking about things that need to move at machine speed. So we have to make sure our requirements process and how we get that through the system also moves at pace as well. So we're working real hard in that area. And it's not just about material requirements. It's about .mil PFP. And most things that eat our lunch, and I see a lot of head nods when I say this, is policy. All right? But as we transform the Army, it's going to be more than policy. It's going to go across all .mil PFP. So again, I'm saying this because when I come around and talk with you, most of the questions, as you show me some really innovative approaches to solve problems, the first question I turn around to you is say, what policy challenges are eating our lunch? Why can't we put these two things together? And there's some great feedback, and I appreciate all that. The last thing I want to close with is the Army doesn't do it alone. As my colleague General Gagnon talked about, the key role of space to the United States Army. The United States Army is the largest user of any space asset there is. I mean, hands down, that doesn't change, and we have to acknowledge that, which is why we have such great partnerships with our sister services, and the Army is in a partnership at the Army and Space Force level with the Space Force to do a lot of great things together, and that's how we learn together, and that's how we make better decisions together, and the same things goes for the intelligence community. So I also look forward to your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. So Brigadier General Ed Barker, the PEO for our Army's PEO for IEW&S, Intelligence, Electronic Warfare, and Sensors. And I know I'm between us and questions, and equally important, probably a happy hour as we wrap up a great week here at AUSA. So part of my job is to ensure, to be that material developer that provides capabilities across the intelligence enterprise and in a bunch of other places, and enables guys like General Crooks to deliver capabilities. So inherent within that job and a lot of our programs, we have either specified or implied requirements when it comes to AI and ML. Sometimes it could be as simple as relieving the cognitive burden on a soldier, okay? And so what we've learned is that as we kind of go down this path from an AI and ML standpoint, a lot of folks are learning. We're learning about what that needs to look like from an Army standpoint. We're learning what that needs to look like from a PEO standpoint. And what we realized is that there's going to be a lot of opportunities where we're going to have to leverage each other's work. So one of the things that we're focused on is really building out an AI and ML ecosystem in the coming years that will allow for a trusted, safe environment for other PMs and other Army elements to bring in their models to go against curated and trusted data, to be in an environment where they're trained and then verified, making sure we have the right security wrappers around it to understand if there's any types of drift or things getting out of tolerance from those models, and then redeploying them back into their environment, like automatic target recognition for XM30 as an example, or the ability to characterize a new signal of interest for an electronic warfare officer, another good example. So as we kind of build that out, and establish that trusted environment, we're looking at ways to really get at what we've talked about a little bit here with regard to PED. So we have so much data, so much data, and the human speed is just not feasible anymore. Okay, you heard about the pace of change from our PRC, and so that's the kind of pace that we're up against, right? And so we have some initial use cases that we're doing with USERPAC as an example, where we're partnering with the NRO, NGA, CDAO, and those types of elements to really get at the PED problem from a USERPAC standpoint. And the goal is really to do that hard work and not have, through AI and ML, and not place that burden on our analyst, and really allow that analyst to get at the high-level analysis that we want them to provide that context, right? To provide that context that really only the human can do, right? And so that's our goal, and that's what we're building out. We're really laser focused on it within the PEO, trying to enable those capabilities, not only across our PEO but across the Army. We're running fast. I can't do it as a material guy because I need the help. I can't do it solely. I need the help of these guys here. It is a team effort. It is something that goes across the .mil PF because we're literally breaking new ground in a lot of new places. So I need their help. We need industry's help, academia. It's got to be a team effort on this because it's just something we can't fail at. So, and I think I'll wrap up there, and we'll go ahead and start taking any questions you may have.
Okay, great. And thanks to our panel members for those thought-provoking opening comments. And as the guy who invited the Space Force to come out and support us in this panel, I really want one fastball space question for my good friend Major General Gagnon. So yes, ma'am, sir.
General, this is I'm Sidney Friedberg from Breaking Defense, and actually the son of a World War II imagery analyst. So one of my first memories is him showing me the photos of the D-Day beaches with the gun splashes from the Germans firing at the recon aircraft, because it was pre-June 6 photos. So I have a strong attachment, a lot of sympathy for this. But I want to ask about responsible AI and particularly the idea of automation bias. General Hale mentioned, the Israeli use of AI like Lavender and Gospel, but there's also been a lot of reporting the way they managed to get such a high tempo of targets from that is they simply turned the dials way up and basically told the AI anything that more or less, counts as Hezbollah or Hamas connected is a valid target, and the human role was reduced to kind of like when you get the new terms and conditions on your phone, just scrolling through and clicking OK, 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 except people died every time. How do we avoid that? How do we avoid, the AI, especially when you talk about natural language processing, generative systems that have a tendency to hallucinate, the AI just sort of becoming this engine that spits out vast numbers of targets, and the human beings who are overwhelmed and will probably be overwhelmed in a high-intensity conflict even with AI support, how do you keep them doing that human analysis as opposed to just clicking the OK button and blowing stuff up?
So that's a great question. And I would probably say, first off, it was maybe correct until the 6 Israeli intel officers came out and said, we executed that strike totally based on AI, if you remember that, about 6+ months ago. But from an Army perspective in particular, before I hand it over to the panel, I believe you have to keep the human on the loop, not in the loop when you're doing targeting. And if you've been in targeting decisions, as I have, you always want that human on the loop to verify the target. So I'll pass it over to the panel right quick.
Okay, give it a second. All right. I'll take a first stab. Thanks for the question, Sydney. The first part of this is the idea of being able to trust. You talked about hallucination. It is a thing right now. We are probably technologically capable, as you just demonstrated in that example, of doing a lot of things fast. But I know from the way the U.S. wants to fight by the laws of armed conflict, we are quite a distance right now from trusting AI and the ability to automate our targeting in that respect. So we must build trust. What you just described is if there's a competition continuum that goes from, on this end, collaboration, all the way to the highest intensity of combat on this other end, I think you start to build the trust on the lower end toward the collaboration pre-crisis. And the more we exercise, the more we get confidence in our machine learning, that it is giving us good data that we can make hard ethical decisions off of. That's where we have to start. And I don't speak for General Rainey, but I've heard him say at least a few times that he thinks we need to be 10 times faster than our adversaries so that we can employ ethical decision making as part of that targeting process.
Hey, Sidney, thanks for the question. Good seeing you again. Just from a technical aspect, within that AI/ML ecosystem I was discussing, so there is not only trust in the actual execution, but there's trust in the outcomes, right, and the process, and all of the things that we put in within that ecosystem to ensure that those models, when they go back into their environments, we have mechanisms in place to understand when they're going to experience, or if they're experiencing any type of drift or variance, and do we need to bring them back into the environment and retrain. So monitoring that, understanding the triggers, and making sure we have the security process in place to address any type of counter AI when it comes to contaminating data. I will tell you that from a PRC standpoint, that is an area they are absolutely investing in a high degree is counter AI. So that entire ecosystem, as we build that out, okay, that is a laser focus for us when it comes to ensuring that everything that comes out of there is trusted, and we have the means to monitor it and make sure that it remains trusted.
Next question back here.
Hey, good afternoon, folks. This was an amazing presentation, so thank you so much for sharing this with us. Ash Banerjee here. General question is, as the Army and IWNS in particular goes ahead and establishes this whole ecosystem for AI and ML at scale, why has the Army and IWNS in particular has not looked at establishing a AI/ML reference architecture that could potentially drive the path forward as you bring in more and more vendors to do specific components of that MLOps pipeline? You would need a rubric or a reference architecture to make sure that they are all compliant to that. We haven't seen that. Maybe it's an Army-wide problem, or maybe it's just IWNS, but it'll be great to actually have somebody take that up.
Sure. What I'll say is, I'll really oversimplify this. It's on the list, right? And so as we kind of learn, when we went down this path, what we quickly realized was that there was no turnkey solution to solve this, right? There's so many opportunities and space within that ecosystem, whether it's on the data curation or data labeling side, the training. There's so many different opportunities. So we're learning that. But as we kind of go down this path, and when you look at some of the pilots that we're doing, those are kind of foundational as we look to kind of establish that reference architecture and the kind of long-term vision. The thing to remember is we're doing a lot of this internally right now. I mean, from a programmatic standpoint, the official program doesn't really kick off until 26. So everything we're doing right now is risk reduction, so that we make sure whenever the program is formally established in 26 from a resourcing standpoint, we're ready to hit the ground running. So that's the focus, but yeah, we just can't do it all at once.
If I could add real quick to that, is a part the CFT along with the PEO really looking at back to that architecture piece, the data architecture. Should we standardize, and using sensors as an example, what we'd like that data to look like, and make that very public, right? So as you're developing capability, you're developing it essentially to that standard or set of standards. So that's one big piece there. The other thing is, a lot of systems that will produce data may have multi-functions or may need to be modified in use, right? So a command and control aspect of that as well. So something that we have been talking about quite a bit and looking to see where that fits on the roadmap and how quickly we could implement that ties both to the data format, I guess you could say, so it can be rapidly ingested into different technologies as you talk about, as well as the command and control aspect. And we also have to think of it from the security architecture perspective, as we meant before, because this could expand out to our allies and partners as well. And also the classification that some of these systems will naturally come off of can go through cross domains. So to try to reduce that complexity of our networks and then the cost of our systems overall, I think it's a huge problem. So your question's well taken.
Okay, right here in the center. Oh, right behind you. He's got a mic.
Yes, sir. This is Greg Hansel. So this is for General Gagnon. So with the proliferation of commercial space assets and access by adversaries, how do we maintain superiority in the new space environment?
So that is actually a challenging question, and I would tell you your greater concern should not be adversary access to U.S. commercial remote sensing. Your concern should be adversary purpose-built remote sensing in outer space. I told you that the Chinese went over 1,000 satellites last month, okay? And I told you they started at 75 when President Xi took control of the CCP. What I didn't tell you in that first segue was half of those satellites are remote sensing. So as the United States continues to put more and more satellites in outer space, we continue to connect the world, right? Internet access, free access to information. As the PLA expands in outer space, they continue to spy on the world. And what does the PLA and the CCP do when they have leverage? They use it. We see it in the maritime domain, we see it in between the Taiwan Straits, and we see it in other parts of foreign policy. So that's what should concern you more, their own investment in their own systems and the rapid explosion that they have had in outer space.
Okay, we got lightning round. We got 5 minutes left. So question here and then question over there.
All right. So, okay, there we go. Another question for General Gagnon. Gagnon. You all talked about the partnership that space has on the intel side with Army and the other ground forces and how that's made us a powerful fighting force. When it comes to AI-enabled acquisitions, not all parts of the DoD are as savvy buyers as, say, PEO, i.e. WNS, have been working it and transforming the acquisition model with the software acquisition pathway, things like that. How is the Army, and maybe the NRO as well, and Space Force partnering on the acquisition side to make sure when they figure out what these good enterprise requirements are, where they're getting government data rights, where they're getting government purpose data models, and they're able to really take advantage of the ecosystem of all the commercial vendors here, how are we moving that across the force effectively from a Space Force perspective?
The way we do that is through relationships and partnerships, as well as oversight from the OSD as they work through the spend plans and directing changes into spend plans of each of the services. So how that is done is no different than for other weapon systems or other capabilities. One of the challenges of the Department of Defense is that when we talk about AI and ML, most of us don't know what we're talking about, okay? So let's be honest here. So the Space Force sent me this summer to MIT to take a course on AI ML. And I did that with other senior executives, and it was very useful. And it wasn't my introduction to AI ML. I used to run one of the field sites for NSA. So it was sort of a 200 level course. But I can honestly tell you when I do forums like this and I hear questions, I know who knows what they're asking and who doesn't, okay? AI and ML is not going to solve everything for the world. If you think that, I want to sell you some stock.
Yes, ma'am.
There you go.
Thank you very much for the comments across the board. Sorry, I have a little feedback over here. So I loved hearing the vision for multi. All right, that's much better. I loved hearing the vision for multi-infusion pre and post-PED and supported targeting. I can tell you right now, as a small business founder and owner, that technology where the user, the operator, is asking an intelligence question and getting back either information or intelligence at the edge is being built right now. And so my question is really around acquisition and what you're most excited about in terms of pathways for getting access to that technology that's part of that vision. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for your question. I'm going to phone a friend here in a minute for the acquisition end of it, but I would say for the operational requirements end, the most encouraging thing for me is our very most senior leaders in the Army public acknowledgement that the requirements process needs some work. So you heard the Sec Army and the Chief mention it multiple times this week. You've heard General Hale talk about it through a series of engagements over the last 9 months. That we have to transition from a world in which we tell industry, I need this thing, and we describe it in so much specificity, we get exactly what we've asked for, and acknowledging that the innovation is happening in the commercial world, and we have to partner with small businesses just like yours in a way where we describe a problem to you, you come back to us with potential solutions, and then we collaborate on the specifics in a contract or acquisition strategy to make it work for both parties. But I'll turn it over to General Barker.
Yes, what we're excited about is the passion you just really described, especially those small businesses and who've been really getting after some really unique problems. So our goal on the acquisition side of the house is to not only build out that ecosystem, but make sure that as we do that, we have creative contractual mechanisms to rapidly bring on new talent, so to speak, right? And it can't just be isolated to one specific area like training models. I mean, there's the model development, and all the different range of functions within that ecosystem. The thing that we have to remember, though, is that while we're kind of building that out, the specific programs like XM30, TLS, a lot of things within our program, they're going to have their own specific requirements for that model development, right? And that will exist within their program lines, their acquisition approaches, and so making sure that they have the means to go out and interact with you guys when it comes to seeing what's really on the cutting edge and the great work you're doing. So it's a multifaceted approach that we have to take. It's not just within our PEO. I need these guys' helps when it comes to refining requirements, knocking down the policy aspect of things. If there's a problem, we have a great deal of advocacy at the headquarters when it comes to policies, coming out of our headquarters from ASALT. We have a great partnership with Danielle Moyer at the APG Contracting Center, that digital contracting center of excellence. So it is a multifaceted approach, and I think that excitement across the board is what is really impressive.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for coming out to the Warrior Corner this afternoon. Thanks to our panel members, to the questions for the audience. Members will be around for just a few minutes before the team starts preparing for the final Warriors Corner for 2024. But thanks for your attendance this afternoon.